All right, we're live on my end. All right, so let's begin this. Good morning, everybody. This is a Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin, and you are joining us for Saturday Morning Perspectives. Whoa, where'd my boy Thomas go? And my co-host for the Saturday Morning Perspectives is Thomas FreeMe. And this morning we're going to be talking about, we're going to start with, let me get off of Catherine Austin Fitz here. We are going to start with the California floods of 1862. They actually started the rain in 1861, late in 1861, and then carried over into January of 1862 when that's when the flood actually occurred. But the build up to it, we're gonna dive into, because I think that we are very close in the storms that we're having right now to repeating that pattern that happened that caused that flood back then. And so I'm going to read some of the history. And if you're watching on Instagram Live, um, this is something that I've started doing. It's called Saturday Morning Perspectives, and I talk about a bunch of different things. Sometimes events that have happened during the week. Other times, stuff that I just sort of like, I want to take a little bit harder look at that. And I have my buddy Thomas. Oh, there he is. He's back. Let me get him back into the stream here. Yeah, my buddy Thomas joins me, and we talk about stuff. We'll review a clip or an article or something, and then we'll talk a little bit about it and give our perspectives on it. And so we're going to dive into that, and then we're also going to talk about central bank digital currencies and how they're going to affect you if they're implemented. And then a woman by the name of Catherine Austin Fitz. She is kind of on the forefront of this, being against it and the reasons why. And so we're gonna dive a little bit into her, and then also Whitney Webb, who is another researcher, and she deep dives into all kinds of stuff. She has a 2-volume book that she just released called One Nation Under Blackmail, which deep dives into the Jeffrey Epstein, and then how the organized crime and the governments are kind of how they go hand in hand. So we're going to dive a little bit into her too. So great morning plan for you this evening, or this morning. Thomas, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, partner. Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay.
I
Just had
can.
me a little technical difficulties getting set up on my YouTube and all that stuff, but
Yep.
I
No,
believe
I hear you. 4 a.m., 7 a.m. It's kind of on a Saturday morning. It's a little bit early, but I think that we got a good show lined up this morning. So I'm starting with my my coffee, and my coffee actually has my favorite oil in it, which is THC oil, and I
mm,
infuse THC into my coconut oil, and I put it in my coffee on Saturday mornings, which helps me elevate my perspectives. Right.
yeah, no question. I mean that same here. I don't put it in my coffee. I just put it in my lungs, partner.
Yeah, when that's how actually that was how I started Saturday Morning Perspectives. It was just one day I was sitting on I woke up before everybody in the morning, quite like this, on a 4 a.m. And I was just sitting there, and I took a bong rip, sat back, and just started, you know what I mean? Just started thinking about things and coming up with different perspectives and ideas about things that I've read or saw or watched during the week.
You know why I think we do that? I've contemplated that sometimes. Like, is it really the effects of, well, yes, it's the effects of marijuana, but is it really marijuana that makes us think the way that we think when we're under that substance, or is it the fact that marijuana kind of pacifies our emotions, right, to the
Mm.
point to where it allows us, our brain, to not give a shit about our bills or not give a shit about work, and actually sit here and think about something other than bills and work. And then when that happens, you're astounded by the fact that your brain can actually think about some amazing stuff, you know?
No, I would have to agree with you. I think it's the slowing down of
Hmm.
things, right? Your mind, of your thoughts, and just being able to zero in on one thing or two things that you've seen that stood out. It's usually for me, it's something that I saw during the week that stood out, or something I watched that has me thinking or scratching my head, and I'll ponder on it, and I'll start just sort of dissecting it in my head, and then that usually will push me to the next level of that, which is, okay, let me research a little bit more.
Hmm.
And I may be elevated while I'm doing that, and I may not be. It just depends. It depends on how I feel. So that's how Saturday morning perspectives were born. So let's jump into this.
I think that's how Joe Rogan was born, you know,
Probably. I mean,
just
I
because it
think the
was really
people.
him and his best friend, wasn't it? That they just started out and they were just chopping it up about what you and I talk about,
Yeah.
essentially. Not that we're trying to mimic them, but that's just how I think Americans are really looking for that. You know, I think Americans like us, man, really. I see it a lot on TikTok. They're wanting to know the truth, and they have nowhere to go to get the truth. And I think this is why we do well on TikTok and some of these social media platforms, because once the viewer finds us, um, they can relate to us. We're just two American guys giving our opinions on what we see, and I think that both of us value truth, you know, about what's going on in our country more than our emotions or anything else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. There's a thirst right now for authenticity and just being
Mhm.
yourself, and not having the whole production of media, and the breaking news,
All the time.
yeah, breaking this, breaking that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut the fuck up, man. Just like, tell me the shit, and don't give me a spin. Just tell me the news. That's what I want. I just want to know the news. I want to know both sides of it. And they can't do that. And that was
Mhm.
eliminated back. I don't know which one of our fucking previous leaders
Well, I think when it went
did it.
mainstream, when it went 24 hours, I think is what the issue was, because when you went from just your evening news and whatnot to a mainstream 24-hour news source, these people have to keep them ratings up constantly.
Hmm.
They have to
Hmm.
constantly be having these breaking news. They have to constantly be having people tuned in. How do you do that? You turn news into a discussion, you know?
Yep.
Then it
Yep.
just turns into opinion. Now all we get from the news is some Joe Schmo's opinion.
Hmm. Hmm. Infotainment.
Hmm.
All right. So let's just dive into this for everybody who's checking this out. All right.
Let's go.
Floods of 1862 in California. The Great Floods. All right. So let's pull this up. Let's get back into the
Yeah, let me get some articles here pulled up.
all right, so I'm going to read this to y'all. All right, so you're gonna have to bear with my sixth grade reading level. So in California was hit by a combination of incessant rain, snow, and then unseasonally high temperatures. In Northern California, it snowed heavily during the latter part of November and the first few days of December, when the temperature rose unusually high until it began to rain. In San Francisco, there were 35 inches of precipitation in December 1861 to January 1862 for almost 50 for the season. There were four distinct rainy periods. The first occurred December 9th, 1861, the second on December 23rd, the third on January 9th through 12th, and the fourth January 15th through 17th. The reason why I'm talking about this is because in California right now, we have the same pattern. We have the same pattern All right, we just finished the third storm, and we're heading right into the fourth one, which is supposed to be a higher temperature one. So that's why I'm talking about this, because it's very similar. So the fourth being January 15th through the 17th. Native Americans knew that the Sacramento Valley could become an inland sea when the rains came. Their storytellers described water filling the valley from Coast Range to the Sierra. That's a big span. Just if you don't know, if you've never been to California, you don't know this area, that's a huge span of land. All right, so for Northern California, Fort Terroir, located in Klamath Glen, California, was destroyed by the flood in December 1861 and abandoned on June 10th, 1862. Bridges were washed away in Trinity and Shasta counties. At Red Dog in Nevada County, William Bogle reported that from December 23rd to January 22nd, it rained a total of 25.5 inches. And on January 10th and 11th alone, it rained over 11 inches. At Weaverville, John Carr was a witness to sudden melt of snow by heavy rain and onset of the flood in December 1861 on the Trinity River. These are his words. From November until the latter part of March, there was a succession of storms and floods. The ground was covered with snow 1 foot deep, and on the mountains much deeper. The water in the river seemed like some mighty, uncontrollable monster of destruction broken away from its bonds, rushing uncontrollably on and everywhere, carrying ruin and destruction in its course. When rising, the river seemed highest in the middle, from the head settlement to the mouth of the Trinity River. For a distance of 150 miles, everything was swept to destruction. Not a bridge was left, a mining wheel or sluice box. Parts of ranches and miners' cabins met the same fate. The labor of hundreds of men and their savings of years invested in bridges, mines, and ranches were all swept away. In 48 hours, the Valley of Trinity was left desolate. The county never recovered from that disastrous flood. Many of the mining wheels and bridges were never rebuilt. 2 years later, William H. Brewer saw near Crescent City the debris of the flood. The floods of 2 years ago brought down an immense amount of driftwood from all of the rivers along the coast, and it was cast up along this part of the coast in quantities that stagger belief. It looked to me as if I saw enough in 10 miles along the shore to make 1,000,000 cords of wood. One I measured was 210 feet long and 3.5 feet at the little end without the bark. In the Central Valley, the entire Sacramento, San Joaquin valleys were inundated, an area about 300 miles long, averaging 20 miles in width and covering 5,000 to 6,000 square miles, was underwater. The water flooding the Central Valley reached depths up to 30 feet, completely submerging telegraph poles that had just been installed between San Francisco and New York. Transportation, mail, and communications across the state were disrupted for a month. Water covered portions of the valley from December 1861 through the spring and into the summer of 1862. The rainy season commenced on the 8th of November, and for 4 weeks, with scarcely any intermission. The rain continued to fall very gently in San Francisco, but in heavy showers in the interior, according to the statement of a Grass Valley paper. 9 inches of rain fell there in 36 hours on the 7th and 8th. The next day, the riverbeds were full almost to the hilltops. The North Fork of the American River at Auburn rose 30 feet, and in many other mountain streams, the rise was almost as great. On the 9th, the flood reached the lowland of the Sacramento Valley. In Knight's Ferry, in the foothills of Sierra Nevada, astride Stanislaus River, about 40 miles east of Modesto, the town's homes, its mill, and most of the businesses were ruined by the flood. The bridge spanning the river initially withstood the flood waters, but was destroyed when the debris of The bridge at 2 Mile Bar, only a short distance up the river, torn from its foundation, crashed into the Knights Ferry Bridge, crushing the truss supports and knocking it from its foundation. All Sacramento, excepting one street, part of Marysville, part of Santa Rosa, part of Auburn, part of Sonora, part of Nevada City, and part of Napa were underwater. Some smaller towns like Empire City and Mokelumne City were entirely destroyed.
Do we have pictures? Are there
Um,
pictures?
I have some pictures over here, like some images of this on, from Google, and it just shows, like this one right here, where they're rowing through the city. There's a bigger
Looking like
one here.
Venice.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, if you've ever been to this area, it was huge. It's a huge swath of land. And like, I don't know if that's possible now with all of the, improvements. I mean, you got to think 1862, this is back in the pioneer days. You know what I mean? Where they were barely settling.
Well, it's amazing
And
that we have those types of photography coming from that time. How
yeah,
believable are those pictures?
how believable or unbelievable?
How believable. Like those were kind of some amazing shots coming from 1862, as far as I know. I mean, didn't you have to like set up cameras and bulbs and all kinds of stuff, and they hit the little button and a little explosion happens and stuff?
Yeah, but I mean, how many of them are of those were just drawings too?
Well, that's what I really couldn't tell. Yeah. To me, it looked like just a bunch of pictures.
All right, let me finish this. The Sacramento one. We got this is actually, Jesus Christ, this is kind of long.
Yeah.
So I mean, the point is, all right, there's a lot of damage in this storm, and a lot of people don't even know about it. They don't even
I never
realize
even
that.
heard about it.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I live in this state. But I mean, that doesn't say a whole lot because I don't pay attention to a whole lot of shit sometimes. So we're coming into another storm, right? It's supposed to last for 3 days. It's going to start later on this afternoon and push into Tuesday. So it's supposed to be warmer than this last one. I don't know how many degrees. I guess I could do a little bit more research on that. See how many degrees higher it's going to be. But if it does what the other one did, which is drop warmer water onto these Sierra foothills, and the lower elevations, like 2,000 to 6,000 feet, were the elevations of the last storm in 1862, where the rain just immediately melted all of the snow in a 48-hour period, I believe, and it just, just.
So let me see if I understand this right. Right. So you had, of course, over because I've never been to California. All of this has to be pictured in my mind, right? So you have a landscape out there, of course, with mountains, and then you have snow on top of the mountains, and then the flood of 1861 going into 2 was that there was a series of storms that I guess the temperature of each storm was higher than the last, and it was just setting off a, no pun intended, a snowball effect. And then what the fourth storm was the wash all that melted all the snow, and that is where all the water came to flood the city. Okay, got it.
It came to flood out the area, and then since all of this water hadn't had time to settle, right? It's just all of the ground there's nowhere for it to saturate to. It just runs off, right? And so we're like, even right where I live, it's an agricultural area, and there's a bunch of farming fields and stuff that are completely underwater right now. And this water's been standing, for, I don't know, about a month and a half now, since the first 30 days continuous rain. And so that's a problem too, because it's it's not going to go anywhere. And then in the
That's how much
summertime,
rain you guys have been having out there?
yeah, I'm telling you, it's exactly the same amount as if is like it's this exact same storm systems, almost to the T in 18 as the ones in 1862. So the telling one is going to be this next one, and how much higher the temperature gets of these storms. So of the air temperature, and what's coming down. So you see this map right here. This right
Yep.
here is a
Oakland. I see
Sacramento.
Oakland.
Yep. So here's Concord. I live probably right around in this area over here. And like I'd be affected by this just barely. But no, I live right off the water. But all of this other area over here is the Sacramento Valley, right? This whole valley is literally going to be underwater. Parts of the Bay Area, like here's Concord. This right here is like Rio Vista. Coming over here, this is like Vallejo area. They'd be affected as well. So, I mean, these storms are every 1 to 200 years. There's an article right here. It says geologic evidence shows that truly massive floods, and this is from Scientific American, caused by rainfall alone have occurred in California every 1 to 200 years. Such floods are likely caused by atmospheric rivers, narrow bands of water vapor about a mile above the ocean that extend for thousands of kilometers. The atmospheric river storms featured in January 2013 article in Scientific America that I co-wrote with Michael Dettinger, The Coming Mega Floods, are responsible for most of the largest historical floods in many Western states. The only mega flood to strike the American West in recent history occurred during the winter of 1861-62. California bore the brunt of damage. This disaster turned enormous regions of the state into inland seas for months and took thousands of human lives. The cost was devastating. 1/4 of California's economy was destroyed, forcing the state into bankruptcy. And so this was preceded by the gold rush, right? So everybody rushed out to California to, get gold, looking for gold. And you had the Sacramento Valley, which is where they all sort of settled, right? And then they would go up into which was the major settlement, and then they go up into the Sierras and the foothills and do their mining and stuff. And all these rivers, as miners, you find gold by rivers because that's where it's formed, and so that's why it was so devastating. Now I don't know about now, like what would happen. I know that we recently, I think the last thing that we experienced, like major wise from the melt, was the Oroville Dam, and that when that broke, and luckily it didn't do that a whole lot of damage, but who knows, man. Nature is
The Oroville Dam. I don't know anything about that either.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was only it was a local thing, but I mean, it had a scare of everybody for a little bit, especially us down here, because I'm on the Delta, so everything flows from the Sacramento River, and then it pushes out into the ocean through the bay, and then but we're another little, leg off of, to the left or to the right, I think, if you're looking coming up. And in that little waterway, so I don't know, the Delta is kind of strange.
I need to get out there sometime, man. I need to get out there, and because I do want to come out there to California, but I'm scared to death of earthquakes. And the liberals that you guys got out there, man, are on a whole different plane of existence. I don't know if I can, but I do want to get out there. Everything's changing, man. Everything is changing.
It is. Well, I mean, I was looking at or hearing something. I was listening to something, and I guess there's still a thing to get into the state. You know what I mean? If you're traveling in, you got to show something, you know what I mean, to get in still. And I don't want to talk about, specifics because we're on YouTube. We don't want to get flagged over there. But yeah, I mean, if that's true, that's crazy, and nobody else is. And I think I heard that on Joe Rogan, on one of his more recent ones that he had on there. He's had some good ones, man. Did you listen to the CoffeeZilla one? And they're talking about, they're talking about the Sam Bankman-Fried and this guy CoffeeZilla. He like sniffs out frauds and exposes them. And so it was interesting, his take on the whole Sam Bankman-Fried and the FTX thing.
I just don't have time, man. There's so much, and that's some of the issue, Sean, that with my show is I kind of run out of material because I'm having to dig for material in the last minute just because I got so much going on in my daily life. You know what I mean? With what we're doing here in the Tampa area and such. But
Tampa's growing.
There's man, and it's growing fast, and so are the issues. Right? More money is more problems. So the more money that's flooding into Tampa Bay is creating more problems in Tampa Bay. You know, and it's just, for me, it seems like these people are trying to flip the country. It seems like they're trying to bring you guys out here to do something with these conservatives out here. So we need to bring more liberals out here. So let's dump California and New York into Florida. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they're hoping that the ideology and the political, they're hoping that they'll chase people out of these states, out of these liberal states, and they're going to chase them into these other, conservative places that are more free, and what the normal thing is that these folks usually come to these areas, and then they make these areas just like the areas that they left that they hated, you know what I mean, for the exact same reason. So it's like they project what they left onto the population that they just are coming to.
You know how I see it? This is how I see, man. I see, like, right now, I see Roger Goodell and Joe Biden sitting in an office together, trying to figure out how to make it 500 across the playing field. Right? They want each state 50-50. They want an equal divide everywhere, because when you have a 50-50 like that, it's very easy to manipulate. Right? This is why Goodell wants all teams to be even, because it's easier to shade a game by 3 points than it is by 20 or 30. So they need all the teams to be as equal as possible so they can shade just slantly left or slantly right according to how the game is going. You see what I'm saying? This is why Goodell wants a 500 league, not because the games are exciting, because it's easier to control and make you believe that you're watching something real. That's the key. So how do we know they're not doing that here, with this stuff? How do we know that they're not adjusting economies to make an economy tank in a certain city like Detroit or now out there in California and such? Because we know that this is generational. It takes years to do this. So we're the frog in the boiling water. You know what I mean? As it's becoming to boil. We have no idea about the degree change. But the ones that are manipulating this, as we'll get into the central banks later, right? They can do that without us even knowing that we're in this pot. Then all of a sudden, we just want to get up and move somewhere because this other place over here sounds so much more appealing. You know what I mean? So now everywhere we hear on TikTok and everywhere else, we're hearing all this crap about how great Florida is. It's everywhere. They got DeSantis up here being the champion of freedom. It's ridiculous, man. The pandering that these people do is absolutely ridiculous, man.
I was listening to your governor. I guess he made a stop here in California, and he was talking at the Ronald Reagan something or other. And I mean, he sounds really good, right? I mean,
Mhm.
the guy, man, he's got some sweet honey coming off of his tongue, boy. Let me tell you. Yeah,
He's a prosecutor.
it had me, rising up and my toes, like you see in the
Ready to convict. I'm
yeah.
telling you, he had you ready to convict.
And and then I start hearing other things, right? You start, really hearing other people talk about stuff and some of the things that he supported and stuff that he's not supported. And it's interesting. It's like, damn, man. I think it was the difference between him and Trump and some of the things that Trump supports and is doing and is more in line with freedom than some of the things that DeSantis is doing.
Mhm.
And even though he's under the guise of it, I don't know, man. It's really hard to decipher this bullshit.
And that's why I don't believe none of it. I would rather not believe none of it. Like this whole WWE confrontation they got going between Trump and DeSantis now. And I think that what that was because they were trying to tie DeSantis
Perfect.
to Trump because they were so similar. But then I think DeSantis really kind of wanted to run for himself. He didn't want to be Trump's vice president. He wanted to run for himself. So they had to create a divide between them. These people play golf together. You know what I mean? Come on, man. Stop it. Stop it with this foolishness and this nonsense, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that brings us right in a good segue into central bank digital currency. And what is it? We're hearing a little bit about it. We just saw the crypto thing and the Sam Bankman-Fried and Binance and all of these shady crypto stuff, and then you got Bitcoin, and that's the one. And I mean, I remember I used to here's some history, some criminal history. I used to use Bitcoin back in the day, and this was probably in 2009 and 10. We would buy Bitcoin, and that's how we would buy our credit card dumps, right? From Russia. And so hackers in Russia, so when they do these data breaches and they get all this information, usually it's a credit card number, your CVV, your all your pertinent information that you would need as a credit card fraud person to encode the back of a credit card so you can get a blank card, put the mag strip encoding information in the back, and then you press it out and then you go and you use it. And so we were using Bitcoin for the transactions. And then sometimes we would even just load up, like we would send a prepaid, or no, they would give the information for a prepaid and we would just load that prepaid card and from over there. So you would see that it was loaded in California and that it was when they take it out, when they it was pulled out in Russia somewhere or sometimes in Switzerland. It always changed. It was never the same place. It was kind of weird. But anyways, I digress.
I never got, man, I tried to learn. I never really understood or could get into fraud in no sense, but when I'm out there, when I was younger and I was out there trying to, commit crime to make money just to eat, right? Like I'm trying to learn, man, like, man, what kind of scheme you got going on with the banks? What kind of scheme you got going on, doing this? I met this dude up in New York. This is what he had going on. He ended up getting busted in a lot of time for it. I mean, it all ends up in the end result, But what he used to do, partner, was he used to he got a like a FedEx outfit, right? And he got a big box, and he's up in the city. And what he would do is he would get this big box and he would just write a name on the box. And then he would go into these large buildings, these big corporate buildings, I guess, whatever, and go hit up the people down in the bottom. He had a 1-800 number. And when you get these numbers, you can make them for however much you want a minute. So, like he said, the trick was not to make it so outstanding that it causes red flags, but enough that, you're going to make a little bit of money from it while it goes unnoticed. But he would walk into the front office with the box and he would say, I have a package for, whoever, whatever. And, the people would say, a lot of the times they would say, we have nobody in this building by that name or such, or no position, or however he would do it. He would get the people to let him use the phone. He would just tell the people, let me just use the phone to call the office, see what they want me to do with this package. Because this was back in the 90s. You know what I mean?
And before
So
cell phones, or at least before they were
before
attainable
the
by everybody.
communication is that we have today, right? This you could never do this today. This was just back then. You were taking advantage. That's what fraud is taking advantage of loopholes in the system. You know what I mean? So he walked in, he would get on the phone, he would call his 1-800 number, he would put it on hold and hang the phone up and just walk out of the building and go to the next one. And it's like he said, man, that phone may stay on hold for 2 hours, before somebody just picks up the phone, realizes that there's a line on hold, pick it up, see nobody's there and hang up. And then before they even catch that in accounting, you know what I mean? Like accounting would never catch that. And so after a while, they would just keep seeing the repetitive, and that's eventually how he ended up getting caught. Years. I mean, the dude made buku money, but I think
that's a tough hustle, man. That's a hustle that requires, you know what I mean? You're gonna stay fit with that hustle because you gotta beat feet on the concrete.
And you probably got people fooled that you really work for UPS. Man, I work for UPS. I'm out here just delivering packages. People may even see you out there with a package in your hand walking around, and really you scheming.
You know what was appealing to fraud to me? It was the challenge. It was a challenge of going, I mean, because there's all like the elements you're just talking about. There's acting involved. There's, being something that you're not. So you're, to me, that's, I didn't like myself very much anyway. So it's like, fuck, why not? I'd love to be someone else. And then when you're almost going to get pinched, because that happened a few times with me, and you talk your way out of it. The research that you've done on knowing people's information, their all the stuff that you need to know, like their ID number, their social security number, if you ever get pinched, that you be able to spout that off to a police officer. And the more you can do that without having to think about it, it's almost second nature. That gets you out of a lot of trouble, because most people just take your confidence as, what's a con man? A confidence man.
Right.
So you're confident in what you're saying, which is like, okay, now they're confident in what you're saying, and so they're not looking at you as hard now. So it was just interesting. The games we play, or the games that I would play to get out of having a real job.
well, the thing of it is that true enough, on the sense that that's what you're doing and that's what I'm doing at this level. But when we get into international fraud, like we get into elite status fraud, right? And their targets are the banks. I think it's important for Americans to understand, back into our centralized banks. I think it's important for Americans to understand, like, these people are not just targeting your money. They're not targeting Sean Dustin's money. They're not targeting Thomas FreeMe's money. They don't want our money. What they're targeting is the centralized banking system, because what it is and what it represents and the evilness behind it. So in order to understand the crypto aspect of what you're getting into, you really have to understand what is centralized banking, not the definition of, oh, it's just a group of banks that all work together for one cause, essentially. It's understanding the root, the agenda, the darkness of centralized banking, right? This is what has true. But the centralized banking system is what assassinated our presidents, right? And when you go back through the timeline, when they say about, the Civil War was over taxation, the revolution was over taxation, we really have to understand, like, for a human being to relate to humanity back then in the 1800s and going into the late 1700s, 1800s, and all that, you have to just look at how your politicians are today, and nothing has really changed, because in that lapse of time, these 100 or 200 years, it's equivalent really to our life. In that sense, it's just our life expanded. Our life is a microcosm of the life of America, but it's still the same people and the same ideology that is being pushed, right? Which
Mhm.
is to govern the people in such a fashion, right? So it's understanding what centralized banking was. When these individuals, you had certain individuals, certain human beings that came over here in that time and had an idea that this was the last landscape on the face of the planet that was not controlled by centralized banking. This was the great frontier, the last frontier, right? So they came over here and man, we're sorry we got to do this to you Indians, but you guys just don't understand. You guys are living in a hut, you know what I mean, with bones in your nose and stuff like that, and you have no idea what's coming. And
Savages. You're savages.
well, I think it was just that you had these white supremacists who just felt like their way was the best way, and they were saviors of the world.
It was the colonizers. It was the folks that came over. So if you watch 1923, that's on Hulu. It's another one of the prequels to Yellowstone. They go in specifically on how they treated the Native Americans, that they would rip the children away from their reservations and stick them in these Indian schools, and would literally like try to beat the savage out of them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? They would rape and they would molest and they would abuse, all of these Indians, and it followed one of them. And my mom didn't like it. She was like, I don't know why they did it, because it was pretty brutal, how they depicted the treatment of these folks, and
Mhm.
it was hard to
And
watch.
see,
Some of it was hard to watch because I think the hardest part of watching something like that is to realize that we as a species, as a are capable of doing that to each other. And it's hard to watch that.
well, the thing of it is that it gets worse and worse. You know what I mean? It's again, it's all indoctrination, because at the end of the day, we don't even know that crap really even happened. This is just somebody's opinion of how they depicted that history to be, and they put it in cinema, and they do it with the intent to strike emotion into the viewer, right?
Mhm.
So but at the end of the day, a person has to step back and say, you know what? I don't even know if that even really happened like that. This was just for entertainment, to get a point across.
But the very
But
fact that somebody would come over, like, I mean, like, would you even now, okay, now, would you go to somebody else's land and they were occupying it and you just said, "Nope, it's ours now. Get out of
well,
here."
you have to ask yourself this, right? So say we're being invaded by zombies, and there's zombies freaking everywhere, and they're eating everybody, and you run to your neighbor's house and he's just sitting there drinking beer, watching TV, and has no idea what's going on outside of the house. And his house is the only house left on earth that's not affected, right?
Mhm.
Don't I think his house is going to be fucking bombarded and turned into a storm shelter. And I think
Well, at
that's what
some
these
point.
colonizers were doing. You know what I mean? In their mind, understanding what centralized banking is, I think that, in my own opinion, through my process of history, that they had the intention of coming here to the last frontier and trying to get away from centralized banking, because at that time, you and I could build a bank as long as we had the gold to back up the money, the capital. You and I could start a bank. We could be a bank, and we could build a town behind that bank.
Mhm.
You can't do that no more. Where can you do that at? Nowhere.
Nope.
So everything is controlled by centralized banking. And then the wars that we were going through at that time was the British trying to bring that centralized banking into America. And this is why Lincoln was shot. This is why Garfield was shot. This is why these people were killed, because they were against the centralized banking. And then you have Woodrow Wilson, who comes in, who's a Democrat, one of the most evilest Democrats on the face of the planet, because he is the one that came in and signed into law, centralized banking.
Now,
And
is
then
that
we
the
had the
Federal
first,
Reserve?
well, they built, so it's him and a man named Philip Edward House.
Now, is
Philip
that the
Edward House.
creature, the book, The Creature of Jekyll Island? I think that book talks about how the Federal Reserve was born and the meeting that took place that like gamed it all out.
There's a book, if anybody's interested truly in knowing this, there's a book that Philip, let me find what his accurate name is. Because it's very important. He wrote a book. This was the head house, like the speaker that we see for the Fed that comes out, Reno or whatever her name is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Janet
This
Yellen.
is Yellen now. Yeah. This is who this house guy was. And he was appointed by Woodrow Wilson. So they formed the Fed as we know it today. This is the formation being put in place now for the Fed that we know today, the Federal Reserve. Philip Edward House. Edward House, Edward M. House. So he wrote a book called Philip Drew. This is where I was getting Philip from. And I read it. It's a short read, and it has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. But this Philip Drew Administrator was Edward House's only book that he wrote. And it's about an individual going through a military academy and essentially seeing the world in his eyes and trying to make it his world, right? Because he feels that he's right. The dude was a complete narcissist. He felt that his opinion, everybody else was stupid and wrong, and he only saw it one way. And if people saw it his way, the world would be a better place. So that this guy maneuvered through his life to put himself in a position to do so. And a lot of people feel that this book was the story, him kind of self-projecting. But this was the individual that was in charge of the Federal Reserve with Woodrow Wilson. And from there, the rest is history, because we had the first bank, the first centralized bank in America pop up, which was in Philadelphia. I believe that was 1861 or something like that, around in there, or maybe sooner, somewhere around in there. And then from there, everything went haywire. So we have what we have today, that now when you put your money into a bank, you put, let's say $1 million into your bank, that money is instantly, soon as it's deposited and cleared, gone. Whoop, it's out of there, because you could leave and come back 10 minutes later and ask for that $1 million that you just brought there back, and they'll have to tell you that you have to wait on that. And they'll give it to you in small increments, because as soon as they take your $1 million, they're taking it to make 100 million off that. And then they're only giving you a fraction of the penny off that.
And they can borrow or they can lend up to 10 times what you deposit against their deposits. So if I deposit $100, they can loan up to 10 times that 100. So what's 10 times 100? Is that $1 million or
10
10,000?
times 100, 10,000.
So they can, so for every 100, they can loan 10,000. So every 100 in deposits, we can go and loan out that. And so that's how they create money out of nothing. That's how they make money out of nothing. And that's not right. They shouldn't be able to do that. But whatever, that's another another story.
Yeah, well,
So I'm gonna read
that's how we get into the tax debt ceiling. But yeah, that's another day.
what the Federal Reserve.gov is their um, definition of central bank digital currency. So while the Federal Reserve has made no decisions on whether to pursue or implement a central bank digital currency or CBDC, we have been exploring the potential benefits and risks of CBDCs from a variety of angels or angles. Angels. There ain't no angels fucking anywhere near any of this stuff,
More than
including through
relaxations kicking in.
including through technological research and experimentation. Our key focus is on whether and how a CBDC could improve an already safe and efficient US domestic payment system. Improve.
Mhm.
Okay. CBDC is generally defined as a digital liability of a central bank that is widely available to the general public. Today in the United States, Federal Reserve notes, i.e., physical currency, are the only type of central bank money available to general public, like existing forms of money. A CBDC would enable the general public to make digital payments as a liability of Federal Reserve. However, a CBDC would be the safest digital asset available to the general public with no associated credit or liquidity risks. The Federal Reserve Board has issued a discussion paper that examines the pros and cons of potential U.S. CBDC as a part of this process. We sought public feedback on a range of topics related to CBDC. The Federal Reserve is committed to hearing a wide range of voices on these topics. So here's another article about central bank digital currencies from the World Economic Forum, explaining all of it and what it is and how great it's going to be for you and how you should just jump right on in, both feet. Actually, no, just dive in, and you don't know if there's a bottom to this pool or not. And it is not. And the reason why I don't think it is, well, you go ahead. Tell me what you think. Do you think a central bank digital currency is the way to go?
No, just like you say, centralized anything is no good because again, it's all about control. So that's why we were saying at the top is you have to understand what centralized banking is and how it was implemented here in America and why it was implemented here in America because it's all about control. So here now you have a currency that they cannot control. They have no idea how to control it. They have no idea how much anybody has of it for the most part. Unless you're keeping it inside of a wallet, which is digital, you got to keep it in something. You know what I mean? So I really honestly don't know how any of that works other than the fact that how I see it is that you got these two global entities that are kind of battling with each other for power. And I think the Bitcoin, the crypto industry, though these powerhouse elites are now in a position and have accumulated enough wealth to now challenge your centralized banking system. And I think what we're seeing, especially if you're in the market and you're watching the fluctuation in the market and what's going on with crypto, and then BTT or whatever it was with this pawn that
FTT
they
token.
used, yeah, FTT token, this pawn that they used. Um, we're seeing that power shift. I think that went into what was it, GameStop and what were they calling those guys?
You mean GameStop? The whole GameStop thing, where
Oh, the whole
the Robin
GameStop
Hood?
thing. I think that was the move. I think that was the power move where they tried to collapse the system. You know what I mean? Where they tried to attack centralized banking and tried to take control, and it didn't work. It didn't work because your powerhouse elites were able to shut it down. The biggest thing is that they had the market that they have that crypto doesn't have is your media, right?
Yeah. So you're right. You're right that it was our first glimpse of how, like, oh, once the billionaires start getting hit in the pocket, they shut it down,
They
and
shut it
you
down
couldn't buy or you couldn't sell, but you could buy.
on
So it was,
Robinhood, right?
yeah, Robinhood, and so
That's
that
right. I
just
was in Robinhood at that time, and I was affected by that.
yeah, that was sort of the first thing that happened, right, with the whole crypto thing. Or not the crypto thing, but just there's been like
The
this
movement.
there's been an accumulation of events that have happened that are pushing us into, oh, we need, look, there's all this fraud, there's this, there's that. Look how, the unregulated markets, look how dangerous they can be. And so the whole FTX thing and Sam Bankman-Fried, I think that was the crescendo, right? Like, oh, look at this huge amount of money that this guy just stole, and it was all through this crypto stuff. And so now they have made a greater need to regulate this stuff, right? Well, right now, two banks just failed yesterday or the last week. One was Silicon Valley Bank, and there was another bank. I don't know the name of it. That's not good. That's not good. We got there's another thing on the horizon that's coming up, and I was listening to something yesterday, and more fraudulent mortgage stuff that these people, some of these banks were heavily invested in. So it's more mortgage crap that's going to start coming out, and you're going to start seeing more people go into foreclosure. You're going to start seeing more banks fail because they were in these risky investments. Just like 2008, it seems. And so we're, I don't know,
Hopefully in
man.
2000, I hope that Americans after 2008 really understood. I was incarcerated at that time, so I didn't get to feel the effects socially that people were having. I didn't have to worry about paying $6-7 for milk or whatever the price was at that time, or things of that nature. It was delivered to me. I just got up in the morning and went to the chow hall for it. So it was, but this is the dichotomy that we're in, right? So I pray that Americans understood what happened in that time and the effects of it. And like, we have to do something. They're trying to make it to a way, Sean, where we have no extensive freedom whatsoever. The freedom that we have is an illusion. It's just giving you the option of choice. But when all those choices lead to the same result, where's the freedom at? It's an illusion, right? This is what I'm trying to get Americans to understand. So these banks are not your friends. Bank of America and these people are not your friends. They don't care about our communities. They're not here. They only do these things because throughout time they were pressurized into giving back into the community. And then they had to form these charities. They had to form these things. They didn't come right out doing them, and that was not their intention to start that way. So these banks are not your friends. This is why you'll never see Bank of America on a repo truck. This is why they hire these unintelligent Americans that don't understand what it is, but are in their own situations of survival because they're unintelligent, right? And they don't know how to make an elevated way of living. So they like me as a drug dealer, like anybody else, we are taking advantage of other Americans' misery, taking advantage of their bad situations that this government puts us in, and we allow ourselves to get in through ignorance. And then you have these other Americans that are out there, like the repo man, who the bank will pay him $100 for each They'll send them a list of people. You go up and round up all this stuff. We'll give you $100 for each one, or however much they make. So now they're going, and this could be their neighbor. Oh man, Joe down the street. I got to go get Joe's car. Shit. I know when Joe is home. That's an easy lick. I can easily go get Joe's car. Right. So this is how they got us doing that. They have us attacking each other for them. You'll never see Bank of America on the side of a repo truck ripping somebody's car out of their house, out of their driveway at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a reason for that. Yeah, me too. And this is the issue that I got going on now, because they illegally repoed my car by fault of them, damaged my car, Sean. And now when I'm trying to get repercussions for that, they're all like this here. Oh, yeah, we don't know. And haven't done it. This is 2 years now. 2 years. I took my car. They damaged my car that I'm paying for now. You know what I mean? And this is a Volvo, so it's not like it's a cheap fix. So that is the banks. That's why I say they are not your friends. They come to you smiling, but so does the devil.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is check out this documentary series called The Con, and it's all about 2008 and the predatory behavior of some of these banks that go into lower income communities, usually impoverished communities, and a lot of the folks that are in these older homes own their homes, right? They're not that expensive. I mean, some of these houses were like 40,000, you know what I mean, to buy it. You could buy it for 40 grand. And so they would go into these communities and get people into these refis. And we can upgrade your home. You know what I mean? You can now afford to pay for, those, to fix your porch now that's been broken. And they're just pouring honey in people's ears. And, and these folks, they think you're from the bank, right? And you are from the bank, but they think because of that, you're knowing, and they don't know any better. And so they would get them into these loans, and watch this series, man. It's really good. I had a couple of the directors on my podcast, and it was interesting how they laid it out. And it's everything in fraud is incentivized for some way, shape, or form, right? There's an incentive to do this. And in the case of the 2008 stuff, it was the Wall Street and the need for mortgage-backed securities. They incentivized all the way down from the appraisers to the folks that get you into the loans, right? And the worse loan that you could get them in, the more money it paid, right? So if you get them in one of those balloon ones, those balloon payments, right, which screwed a whole bunch of people, because you got you into a house that you couldn't even, you probably couldn't afford, right? Got you in cheap. And then, on the back end of it, like maybe 3 years down the road, there's this balloon payment that was due that most folks weren't even gonna, couldn't even do. And it was almost like it was coordinated, because it was around the same time of, a recession. So folks were out of work, you know what I mean? And it just compounded. And it was just a way to just fleece people of their wealth and knock a group back down the ladder. It's like we're in this perpetual game of chutes and ladders.
And that's what pisses me off, man. That's why it's hard for me to watch these type of documentaries, because I've been duped. We've all been duped, right? We've all been duped into believing something that was never real. And it was all for the agenda to make us feel like it was real, so that we continue to work and pay these taxes and pay these people. But yet we're watching these people take our money and send it overseas without even asking us. Like I said in my show, man, like I don't remember getting no census vote. Hey, do you want to pay higher taxes to send money to Ukraine? No. Where was that vote at? So it's these representatives get up there and man, it's it just infuriates me. And at the end of the day, Sean, it's our fault. It's our fault that we allowed these things to happen to us. And I don't know, man. I'm almost getting to the point to where like this freedom thing really destroys a human's brain if it's not understood and appreciated out of the gate. I think you have a lot of people that take advantage of a system that they think is there. They become fat, lethargic, lazy. You know what I mean? They don't want to think. They just want people to do for them, and that is what America has become.
But the
And we've just
system,
go
but
ahead.
the system incentivizes that,
Right,
right?
because it markets it.
Well, because they would what is a population of people that's easier to control? What's a more docile population? A fat, unhealthy, sick, which is most folks. Most of the people that have done the thing. A lot of them are really sick right now. You know what I mean? Or on their way to becoming sick.
Mhm.
And and you have that, and then you have them lazy, you have them in the house, you have people doing the virtual reality, they're playing games, video games, kids these days, that's what they're all doing. A certain generation of them, mine are now like in my she's 5 and she's got a device, and so she's on her tablet, you know what I mean? So they're growing up a different sort of way. It's just it's all for the same thing. They need us controllable
Mhm.
and divided. And we're all just literally, I mean, if you think you have control, just think of it this way, and this is why we don't see it, because we're all at ground level. Let's just say we're on a fucking river, right? And the river's going, and you don't really have a paddle, so you're just going down the river and all these different funnels, right? It goes, whoosh, let's shoot you over this way, whoosh, shoots you over this way. The problem is that these social developers or the social constructors, right? The folks that are having paying for the think tanks and all these other things of how different ways of get people to do this, to do that, to go here, to go there. We're just literally in a society of funnels, and it's all designed to funnel us over here, to funnel us into this direction over there. What agenda do we need to funnel these people over this way? Not everybody's going to get into that funnel, but the majority of the folks are going to fall into that funnel, right? That's why it's so hard to change things. And you got the media that has 60% capture of folks, the legacy media. Then you got people like us that are doing the alternative media or independent media, and those folks that aren't hearing the things that we're talking about because the media is not covering any of it. Not that the things aren't happening, it's just if it's not being covered to the people that are watching these networks, it doesn't exist because they're not being shown. Not that it doesn't exist, because it doesn't exist.
I think at the end of the day, well, I know at the end of the day, just like in your own personal life, it goes for society as well, that everything is our fault. Like these corporations are only marketing to us what we have shown these corporations to that we want. You know what? We love violence, as for whatever reason we love to see violence, so they're going to market violence to us. We love to see sex, so they're going to market sex to us, and they're not going to stop, because as long as we show that we give our money to this, they're going to market us for this in every aspect. In every aspect, we're going to be marketed constantly. From the moment you walk out of your, even in your home, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you go to sleep, you're being marketed for your money.
And your data now is being marketed to these companies that are marketing you because they're making it a more efficient marketing system that is
Mm.
actually geo fencing marketing system that They want to get it to the precision point to where when you say that I've been, I just saw my tires and I think I need a new tire. I think I need a new tire. All of a sudden now, the next time you open up your phone or you hop on your social media, a tire ad will pop up. And if you're somewhere near, they want to get it precise to the point where if it'll direct you to the nearest tire location that you can buy a tire from. And so it's just all about adding and throwing your information back in your face with ads.
And I think and I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that per se, right? Like I mean, I see it all the time on my phone or whatnot. I could be having a conversation in another room and sit down. Facebook is horrible with that. As soon as I sit down on Facebook, 10 minutes later, I start getting in my feed these ads for what I was just talking about in the room. And okay, so that's okay. I don't mind that because I'm aware of it and I'm conscious of it and I know what it is when I see it. But the point that I'm not okay with is the fact that Facebook does not announce that and make awareness to that and to its followers that this is what Facebook does. It tries to do it under the covers so that people who are just asleep at the wheel in their life, they have no idea how they're being directed. So it's kind of like if you're sitting here and you're watching the Super Bowl, let's say, and McDonald's comes and you see this commercial and they're selling their cheeseburgers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you hear the little jingle, da whatever their stupid little jingle is, right? Okay, you're not affected at that time because you're in the emotion of the Super Bowl. You probably had nachos and whatever else is going on. And you may have not even paid attention to that jingle, but your brain did because your brain records everything that your eyes, ears, nose, everything that comes in contact. Your brain is recording all of that, right? So now it could be 3 days later, you're driving in your car, but now you're hungry. And you're listening to your radio and you hear the McDonald's jingle on your radio now. The first thought that's going to come to your mind is those cheeseburgers. And you may not even be conscious to it. You know what? I ain't had a cheeseburger in a little while. Man, let me go get some cheeseburgers from McDonald's. There's a McDonald's right there. Let me just stop and get a couple of these cheeseburgers. You're not even conscious to the fact that the only reason why you even thought about those cheeseburgers is because you heard that jingle. True enough, you were hungry, but the jingle is what got you to go, instead of going to Applebee's or anywhere else, it got you to go to McDonald's. That is how we're being played on every aspect in our lives, as long as these radios and TVs and all this stuff is constantly playing in our ears.
So you're okay with the precursor to, and this is where the central bank, the CBDCs come in, because it's a control. It's everything is always slipped in through the guise of making it easier, more convenient, faster, more access to something, right? We're doing this for your safety. But on the back end of it, right, or underneath it, is a control mechanism, right? So if everything is linked to a digital ID, which is the next thing that's going to come, or maybe it might come before the CBDC, but they're both going to be linked together, right? And this is going to have your shot status, it's going to have your other things, right? Your UBI. If we, as AI starts to eliminate more and more jobs, there are going to be more and more people out there with nothing to do. And so they're not going to allow people to just be sitting there with nothing to do because, the devil's workshop is in idle hands, right? They got to keep people busy somehow. So they don't link up together and band together and revolt, right? Like Animal Farm. They don't want people doing that. And so what they'll do is they'll find a way, they'll give a UBI that'll give people, just enough amount of money to survive. And, if you want to make more, obviously you can, but they want people docile and controllable, right? And so another thing that's going to be done with this, and Catherine Austin Fitts is a woman who really dives deep into this, and she is an American investment banker and a former public official who served as managing director of Dillon Read and Company, and during the presidency of George H.W. Bush as United States Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for Housing. She has widely written and commented on the subject of public spending and has alleged several large-scale instances of government fraud. So she talks about what's coming with this control grid through this central bank digital currency and the digital ID. So, for instance, you and I, right, we're in this system. We could be talking about something that they don't agree with, right? Whoever it is, and it's against the narrative. They can geofence you into a location around your home within 5 miles radius. And how they can do that is if you go outside of that radius and try to spend money, it won't allow your money to work. So you're now locked into this zone because you said something that doesn't jibe with the narrative, or with, you're going against the government. So it's basically, we're going to end up, they want the Chinese model, which is the social score and credit system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all going to be tied to it too.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine too, if you have an electric car that's on Wi-Fi, that's on, this system, on the smart grid, the smart system, the smart everything, smart. Anything that has to do with smart, beware. It's got a control mechanism built in it. Through all of this centralized stuff they're trying to do. They want to eliminate cash because cash is untraceable in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So think about, the 3 years ago, and they locked everybody down. What were the businesses that they were trying to target the most? It was mostly stuff that had to do with cash transactions, restaurants, bars, haircuts, right? Salons. These are cash tipping businesses. They don't want that. They don't want cash because they can't control how much money. You can not report cash, right? A lot of businesses, they'll report their credit card transactions, and I think some like food servers do the same thing. I think I did this when I was a food server. I would report my credit card tips, but not my cash ones, because there was no trail, right? No paper trail. So
Cash will be gone before long. Within the next 100 years, there will be no more cash. Because they're trying to now equate cash to crime, all of these things. So just like every other uh, item that they wanted to take off the shelf, whether it was marijuana, black people, anything else, they just created such a hate monger against that item that the masses would eventually turn against it, whatever it was, whether it's guns or anything. So this is why, like in my message, is so important to the Americans, to the people of the world. Like, man, don't even pay attention to this stuff, because it's all a game. It's all a show. People have been telling us this for hundreds of years. Shakespeare said it. What the hell do you think that this man said? This is an individual that walked the planet hundreds of years ago. You know what I mean? So it's understanding that, like we said at the top of the discussion, we think that in our life that everything happens in one lifetime, and it does not. That's just our ego, our inner self just processing that way, because that is the lifespan of your physical brain. That's all it's recording. But this has been a process that has been ongoing for hundreds of years. to get us to this point. They are tightened down on us to the point to where they laugh in our face now. This administration laughs at the American people. They have no respect for, nobody in the world has respect for the American people, us. And we're out here working as hard as we are to keep paying these people, and it's all a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a dream. We don't need these people's protection. You know who these people are, Sean? Let me tell you. Let me tell you who this government is, man. And government and religion and all these people. I'm going to tell you who they are. When you go to prison, they're the people that come to you and steal all your shit and then come in the back door and tell you, hey, man, listen, we'll make sure that never happens again. You know, you just make sure that you're putting $20 on my books each month and make sure that never happens again. But in the back room, they're partners. It was all a design to get that $20 a month from you. And then when the next person comes in, they do the same thing until they reach an individual where they know they can't do that to. Then they just skip him and go on to the next person. And this is what I'm trying to get the Americans to understand. You know, stop paying taxes. No taxes 2023. Nobody pays taxes. Nobody pays their damn taxes and files taxes. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, if you're gonna do that, and it's possible, all you got to do is go exempt, right? You change your filing status at work to exempt, but they won't. It's not like they'll feel it that day. If we all did it tomorrow or Monday, right? We all do it on Monday morning. We go in, we get our form or W, whatever it is, and we file exempt. The government's not going to feel it until the end of the quarter, right? When those payments from the companies are supposed to get shipped to to get shipped to the government. So you'd have to do it for at least 3 or 4 months.
We're not doing it all. We're not doing it for the rest of 2023. We'll see you in 2024 when you come to us and with correct. When you come to the American people correct, we'll see you in 2024. 2023, you guys figure it out. Go to Ukraine. Tell Ukraine you need some of that money back.
Funny, man. Yeah, it's interesting how we're so like invested in giving our money away to other places, but yet we can't seem to want to help the problems that are happening here. They just don't get addressed. It's and everything's a Ponzi scheme, man. You guys got to understand that. And it's both sides. You know what I mean? It's both sides. There's no right and left and this and that. It's the same organization. It's just like the prosecutor and the public defender working in the same building, getting paid by the same company or the same person, doing the same, trying to put you in the same place. One supposedly we're trying to keep you out, and the other one trying to get you in. But they're going to lunch together, talking about all right, well, I'll give you this guy for this guy. How about we you know what I mean? They're wheeling and dealing because they've got an agenda. They've got goals and aspirations to move up the ladder or whatever it is. But it's all a Ponzi scheme.
All a Ponzi scheme. It's all a Ponzi scheme. And like you say, we keep giving these people our money, but we don't have no money, Sean. It's the illusion. All of it is an illusion, right? It's like the person who buys a $300,000 house on land that he doesn't own, right? You have the illusion that you own a home, but you don't. You're paying property tax. And what happens when whoever owns this land comes and says, you know what? We're getting rid of this land. What happens to your house? You can't pick up this $300,000 home and take it somewhere, right? So you really don't own or have anything. It's the illusion of it. Just like these dollar bills, these paper bills, right? It's a promissory note. It's to say that we back it no matter what, as long as you can produce this right here. But it's the illusion of it. So They are all what they're after, Sean, is our production, your life's energy. They
Yep, your
want to suck
energy.
as much of your life's energy out of you as they can. And in that, we'll just give you a little bit of what you really produce. So let's think about that, because this is a serious conversation, because you have a lot of individuals, especially myself, right, who sit here day in, day out eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because everything I do, every penny I make goes into my passion of what I believe in. So if I was not in control of my thoughts, right, and I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, I would look at my neighbors and see their BMW and their lifestyle and be completely jealous over them, envious, maybe even to the point where I slander these human beings, right? Saying all kinds of assumptions and everything about these people, because at the root, I'm envious, I'm jealous of their car and their house and what appears to be such an easier life from what I have. But this individual does not realize, one, because they've never accumulated that type of salary a year to have those type of things. So they have no idea what goes into that type of salary. And for the individual that is making six figures, right? What this human being is sacrificing to make those six figures is pretty much their complete life. They have no time with their family. They're working damn near 24 hours a day because they're working for a global company, essentially, that is dealing with countries in different time zones. And if you're making that kind of salary, you probably got a lot of people that are depending on you, that are working up under you. You're probably responsible for a lot of people's jobs. This is a lot of pressure on people. So just because you're making these six figures and what appears to the next person that you have a nice car and a nice home, you're not understanding the pressure on that human being, what they're squeezing out of that human being and giving him just those little bit of scraps. So we're all in the same boat when we're working for these elitists, these huge corporations.
And
And
you
just
don't own
because
nothing. You don't own
you don't
nothing.
own nothing,
You own bills.
because
You
let
own
that man
pieces of paper that says that,
that's right.
oh, I'm responsible for this. I'm responsible for this item. That's it. I've taken responsibility for it for you. I'm just watching it until I can pay it off. Yeah, I'm into that. I'm into that. I have to make X amount of dollars every month or my ship will sink. And if in a lot of people right now, what people aren't talking about is the credit card debt, right? There's a bubble there too, not just in the housing market, what we talk about, but the credit card debt right now is at astronomical levels. And I can attest to that because my own credit card debt has gone up to astronomical levels because what do? We don't want to maintain these bills. I had to, put the stuff that I could float on credit. I floated on credit. Is it the right way to do it? Probably not. I'm absolutely not. But that's the way that I did it. We got William Gilbert. What's up, William? Thanks for dropping in. He's got a couple comments. One of them is Trump seems innocent from a lot of people's perspectives. Seems innocent. Well, I mean, I voted for him the first time around, and I'm not afraid to admit that. It was actually the first time that I voted ever in my life, because I didn't realize when I got out of prison and off of probation that I could. I thought it was like I couldn't vote, and I can, and so I did. And it was because I thought he was the lesser of the two evils. I think any billionaire is not a friend to the working class, and you see that across the board in everything. Um, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's the best choice for 2024, unless you want to see more of the same that happened last time he was there, where he didn't get shit done. I mean, he did some good stuff, but he also was attacked the whole time. So, I mean, if you go to a
Right.
new job and you're starting a new job, a new career, and from the moment you get there to the moment you leave, you have people attacking you and keeping you from being able to do your job. And
Can you
so it's
imagine
like,
that? Can you imagine being hired as a VP, right, of a company and going in and you're all excited about going in as the VP, and then you get in there and you're like, "Yeah, okay, so what do I do?" And people are like, "Oh my God, leave me alone. You're so annoying. Stop bothering me. Just go
get
in
out
your
of
room."
here. Yeah.
So yeah, he was opposed from the beginning, but
And then he says to your other thing, he was commenting on they can subject that land to a public easement also. So that's very possible. I mean, if they determine that they want to build a road where your land is, right, or where you own a home, and they'll give you, this happens quite a bit around where I'm at because it's in a rural area, and sometimes they'll decide that they want to, extend something here or do something there, put a road there, and they'll give you the opportunity of one offer, right? They'll offer you X amount of dollars, and a lot of times it's not fair market value. It's what they deem it to be, worth. And so if you don't take it, they can give you less, because the amount after you say no just keeps going down. It doesn't go up.
mm,
And at the very end, when you say no, they can kick you off of it anyways and give you nothing. And there's
that's right.
nothing you can do about it.
Fair value market.
No, I mean, they
Uh,
cannot give you anything. If you refuse, at the end of it, they will give you nothing and kick your ass off.
And that's the point. Like, okay, so and that is 100% factual. And what happens? Who are you going to complain to? Take it to your representative. And what does your neighbors do for you? What does the American citizen do for you? Nothing. Oh man, sorry about your luck. Well, piss on you. You're not going to you know that this is illegal. You know what they did is wrong, but you're not going to stand up for me and help me fight. Well, I don't want them to take my home too.
Yeah,
This is where
I
we
don't
get
want to pay
into.
attention to me. You're gonna have to deal with this on your own.
And why we do that, Sean, is because we find value in these things that they give us. That is the whole point of it. They comfort us with these things that we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose our house and these jet skis and the things that we got going on. So going back to the context of Trump and whatnot and how you don't own anything, we saw that. Think of, again, going back to the individual with the 6 figures in the big house, and he's doing well and all these things, but then he just makes the mistake of making a post during that time about Trump. Oh, I agree with Trump. He's canceled. He loses his job. He loses his salary. He loses everything because he made a crucial mistake of not going with the norm at that time. So everything that you think that you have, again, is an illusion. These people give it to you, they can take it away from you at any moment because you are allowing yourself to be fed from a lion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This
Well,
is where we get into entrepreneurship.
and they're all liars. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just it's at what level that the lie is, and Biden. There's tons of stuff out there with him lying about, his first time he tried to run to be a president, and he lied about his education. He lied about a whole bunch of different things and got caught. He lied about the civil rights movement. He's never been anywhere near a civil rights movement. In a march, in a phone call, in a in a picture. You
The
know what
only
I
civil
mean?
rights movement he was involved in was calling people super predators and saying that he didn't want his kids going to a racial jungle. That was the civil rights movement he was involved in.
Yep. And so, and he's been caught in that lie, but he still continues to push it. So, at least I thought with Trump, it's like, yeah, the guy lies, but he's entertaining while he's lying to you. At least he was making me laugh. The other guy, I'm like, you're responsible for the 94 crime bill and fucking incarcerating another additional 2 million to the population. It's like, hell no, was I going to vote for you? I seen what your policies do. I experienced it firsthand. Um, All right, William Gilbert again. I never voted because I don't think my vote counts. It's the people
Amen.
that we vote into the electoral college, and it's hard to expose their true agenda. Well, with the media, the legacy media not reporting things, and 60% of the population still tuned into that system, it's very difficult to get anything through because not reporting on it is the same thing as it being invisible or not existing in the eyes of those that don't enter into our realms of information, right?
Let's take it back to the NFL, right? Let's look at the NFL again, right? So we know that the NFL is controlled by Vegas, by the bookies, and it's going to swing the game and however it's going to make the most money. And how do they do that? By the bets coming in, right? This is what creates the spread. This is what moves the spread. This is what makes the over unders go up and down, is all the fluctuation of how the bettors are betting. So let's look at it from that angle. And let's say our American vote system is the same thing. It's all rigged. The whole thing is rigged. But which way are we going to swing it? If we have a 50-50 vote, a 45, 55 vote, we could swing it to whichever direction we want. Say the vets are the gamblers. So we are sending in our votes of who we want, and you have these people who are collecting these votes and making a determination of who they can put in office according to these votes that the American people will buy. But again, it's all a sham. It's all an illusion. To me, how I'm starting to see this, Sean, is for me, why? Okay, so why even have this illusion then? Why not just push down on the people and say, we're going into communism and tough? Because they gave us the guns. That is the reason. They gave us the guns, and they know that they cannot push down on us, so they have to manipulate us. They have to manipulate us. How do they manipulate us? By abusing our trust and giving us false hope. Hope is why we get up each morning, Sean, to go to work and pay our taxes. Hope is what is making us pay our taxes and rely on this system that we know does not work. But we hope that it does. And we hope that every 4 years, this new person comes in, is going to show us that this system works. But they never do. They never do. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But yet we keep getting up and paying taxes and paying taxes and paying taxes and hoping for change and hoping for change, to the point now we're working 60 to 80 hours a week. Takes two people to purchase a home anymore. It takes two people in that house. And now you're raising kids. We never have time for the family, right? But we hope. We just pray and hope that things change. I'm done with it, man.
It sounds
that
sounds like a shitty life.
No, but it's what you make it. See, and control, you, Sean, can only be controlled if you allow it to be. And ignorant people are easily manipulated and controlled. So at the end of the
they're
day,
emotional. People that react emotionally, which is a lot of us, right? A lot of us don't. I don't want to know that you can't ever possess the ability to respond intelligently, but it's a trained muscle. You know what I mean? Because the auto response, the operating system default is to get emotional and angry instead of pause, think, maybe not. Expand a little bit on that instead of going, what, motherfucker? What you just say? I'm gonna slap the taste right out your mouth, man. You don't say that shit to me again.
A perfect example of that, right? And this is the important message of what we're trying to relay. I had a Uber ride the other day where I took a guy to the airport. He was going back to Brooklyn. He lived in Brooklyn his whole life. 45 years, right? So I'm taking him back to Brooklyn, and he makes the comment. He's like, man, I'm really distraught about all this stuff going on up there. Like all these people being kicked in front of these trains. Like, what's going on? People being kicked in front of subways and all. He's like, it's crazy. I'm like, let me ask you something. I said, how long have you lived in Brooklyn? He's like, man, all my life, 45 years. I said, do you use the subways? He's like, yeah, that's the transportation. That's how we get around. I said, how many people have you physically seen kicked in front of a train? He's like, you mean with my own eyes? With your own eyes? It's like, no, never. This is my point. Same
Just
conversation
like
with
listen, just like all the racism, right? Oh, it's
all. That's what I was just
racism's
going to get
everywhere.
into.
Racism's all around you. So, man, when is the last time you have yourself heard somebody call another person the N-word in a derogatory manner, like you would see back in the civil rights days, right? Where you would see them pictures of them getting blown down the road with water cannons and like all these fire hoses and everything else, and people were just outright calling them, "Get out of here, you N-word, you," you know what I mean?
Right.
Like vicious, right?
Right.
No, I don't even know. I don't even know if I've ever in my life. I've
You won't.
heard my own people in my family behind closed doors refer to folks that way growing up. But I've never like experienced that outright, in public, anybody saying anything. I mean, I've experienced this civilized sort of upbringing, you know what I mean?
And it's not to say that it don't exist or didn't exist, but this is why they have to keep showing those videos from back in the 60s, because they don't have anything relative today to show. But when they do, they'll try to take it and twist it and turn it into what they want it to appear to look like.
Well, look at
But
the
at the end
last
of
thing
the
that just
day,
happened. Hold on. Look at the last thing that just happened with the black on black officers that killed that one
Tyree
guy.
Nichols.
Yeah, look at that. At the
Rest in
beginning of
peace.
that whole thing, they were trying to frame it as racist, right? And then they did. They said, "Oh, it's reverse racism." You know what I mean? Or whatever it is they tried to spin it into. But I mean, it was like, dude, you're trying to tell us that we are not seeing with our own eyes what we are seeing with our own eyes.
That's right.
You know what I
And
mean?
they'll hide like the California floods and everything else. They hide the truth. You have a lot of darker skinned human beings that are running around that think that lighter skinned human beings have done nothing for them but negative. They've never done anything for quote unquote black people, right? And then the atrocity in that is you have an individual by the name of what's his name? Let me see. Clunder is his last name, but I think it's Robert is his first name. Bruce Clunder, right? Bruce Clunder. This blew me away, and I just learned this. Bruce Clunder was a reverend. He's Reverend Bruce Clunder, was a Presbyterian minister and civil rights activist born in Colorado, United States. He died when he was run over by a bulldozer while protesting the construction of a segregated school in Cleveland, Ohio. You know how many Ohioans have heard of this guy? None. Why? Because this was a white guy who was killed by another white guy for standing up for black people. But that is not taught. We don't know this. Why? Because it was shameful. So white people look at me when I defend black people. They won't say nothing in front of the black people. They smile. But when we get into the room separate, these same white people now that were smiling come to me, hey, man, you got to make sure you look out for the white people too. What the hell are you talking about? It's just ugly, man.
I used to, I have a family member because I grew up. I used to always want to hang out with, the black kids in school. They were the ones that were pitching quarters and, doing shooting dice and like to me that was fun. And so, I was drawn to that. And, it used to drive one of my family members absolutely nuts that I
Mhm.
was, associating with that, and, those types of folks. But at the same time, I learned really early that just because you're hanging with them, you ain't them. And when it comes down to it, you're the other, and you're now the outcast. Because the moment they turn on you and they decide, oh, I'm gonna steal this dude's money now, because you're all shooting dice and there's more of them than there are of you. That's just the way it's going to be, and you have to understand that as well, because there is that aspect,
Mhm.
and that you don't belong. You know what I mean? Just because you're hanging, and this is just my own experience. And somebody tried to tell me that because of my experience, if I'm walking down the street and I see and I use, young black men, a group of them, I'm probably going to cross the street just because of my own experiences and being jumped at one point in time by a group of younger black men. That, the possibility, who knows if it's real or not, but I just don't want to have to deal with it. Right. And so does that make me racist for crossing the street, or does that make me cautious?
Well, okay. So let's because this is what I do, right? Let's break this down, right? Okay. Would I cross the street if it was 5 white people? Probably not, because these 5 white people are probably suits. They've probably never been in a fight in their life, and I could probably take all 5 of them easily, right?
Mhm.
Now, 5 black people, yeah, I may cross the street. Why? Because these 5 black people have probably been fighting their life, right? And they probably are poor, and they probably been having to fight and argue and all of these things. So I would think that my confrontation level with 5 black people may well, see again, that's that's wrong thinking in itself too, because these 5 black people may be suits in themselves and may never been in a fight in their life,
Now, if
and
they
and
were
I
in a suit, if they were in suits, I probably wouldn't.
so right. So let's break this down. So now what is it? It's more of how these human beings are looking, right?
Well, I mean, one looks dangerous. I mean, irregardless. Okay, so I mean, some of the most dangerous people in the world wear suits, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, and a pen, and the pen is mightier than the sword in a lot of cases. So, I guess it just comes down to perceptions, right? Perceptions and
Well,
of
we're talking
an
about
experience. Experience determines a lot of what we do in our operating system, right? Into defaults that we get into, right? We have defaults that we don't even realize that we do until we take a look back after it's already done, or immediately after we do it. We don't understand the operating system and how it just defaults to things until you really dive into it. And I think that's one of those things, when you get beaten, right? If somebody beats you and you get away from somebody that beats you, you are now informed on what that was like to have been beaten in that situation. And anything that looks sort of similar, even smells close to the same, you're like, back up. You know what I mean? That PTSD starts kicking in. And I think and then that informs your next, encounter of anything similar to that. And
mhm.
I think people get racist confused with cautious. Just being cautious, self-preservation and caution, to doing things. Right, we got another comment here. So William Gilbert said it should be common knowledge that many Asians grew out of poverty in the US, but many systems were created to keep blacks in poverty, like food stamps. Well, so here's my issue when you start talking about, and I heard a thing about reparations coming through at some point in California. And if you know your history, you know that every influx of immigrant to this country was exploited to build the infrastructure of this country, right? From the Irish to the Asians. The Asians, they took them and they brought them in and they made them build the railroads. They were a huge part of the railroad construction. You have the Irish that came in. They were considered dirty, they're white people, right? But they were considered dirty immigrants when they came into this country, and they were used for labor, and so were the Italians, and so on and so on and so on. Every influx of immigrant into this country at some generational point or some point in history was used for labor. So for somebody, I mean, if you're not going to give the Native Americans reparations in the form of cash, I just think that, and this is going to be a controversial thing to say, but I think that if anybody has any claim to reparations of any kind, I think the blacks would be not first in line, to be honest with you. I think the Native Americans and the atrocities that were put on those people, they would be the ones that would be the first ones in line, you know what I mean, for any kind of reparation.
Well, I mean, I'm a firm believer that black people are natives as well. It's hard for me to believe that there was no black person on this continent when these white people came, and that they went and got all these millions of black people, rounded them up, and brought them over. You're talking about a few settlers. It's just that's a hard concept for me to believe. I believe that black people were here, they were native, they were enslaved as well, and then they found that they could go get more black people somewhere because they saw how hard they worked and how easily they were trained, or however what was going on in that time, that they went and got more, and yeah, they probably brought maybe 1 million or 2 million. We don't know. Nobody really knows the truth. That's the point. We don't know the truth. All we know is what we know now, and moving forward from there. And we know that human beings can do atrocious things to human beings when they're put in a position of power to rule over other human beings. No matter what your skin color is, we've all been through it at some point. I have a comment from Elizabeth Harvey, that's my co-founder. She says it's racist if you wouldn't do the same if it was someone of another race. And that's true. That's if you're basing your thought process solely on the color of a person's skin, then that is the racist aspect. It doesn't matter what color you are. If I'm making a decision based upon your skin, if I'm driving down the road and I see a car and I see it pulled off on the side of the road and it needs help, it's got the hood up, but I can't see who the occupant of the car is. But in my mind, I see, you know what? I got a couple minutes. Let me pull over and see if this person needs help. And then as I'm pulling up, I see it's a black person. And I said, let me keep going. Right? You just made a racist decision. Now, what was that racist decision rooted in? Was it rooted in stigma and fear, like you say? Because now you look at this person, you say, oh, he's got long dreads and gold teeth, and this is what I see on the news day in and day out. So let me keep going because this looks like trouble. So is that racist in its aspect? Yes, it is, but it's still stigmatic, unconscious racism that we all have. This is why I'm trying to really get away from referring to you as a white person and me as a person as a black person, because that gets the division. When I call you black and me white, that automatically separates us and puts competition in between us. Go ahead, my bad.
Oh, no. I'm listening, but I was wondering, was that in response to my analogy of seeing 5 black people and 5 people, whatever, 5 young people, if you put it that way. I don't think I think if it was young people in general, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what color they are, I still would, because you know how young people are. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it also depends on how many people are around. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
when there's a lot of people around, then there's plenty of witnesses here. The the likeliness of something going down decreases dramatically, right? And so there's all these variables that come in, and these are like, split decisions that you have to make. Now, like I said before, if it was, I don't think it's the color of your skin, because if it was five black folks in suits, that wouldn't be a problem, right? Anybody wearing a suit wouldn't be a problem because they seem respectable. And I would, even if there was, I would not, I would feel more comfortable even if there was nobody on the street in that situation,
Hmm.
right? You're like, okay, the likeliest of me get my ass kicked by a couple of, five guys in a suit, not likely. You know what I mean? Could happen, but probably not. So I don't know. I just don't think it's racist. I just think it's cautious. People are just being cautious. You don't self-preservation. I don't want to get my ass kicked. You know what I mean? Not that I couldn't defend myself, but I don't want to have to. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to defend myself.
Well, of course not. This is why you'd rather go rob a bank with no gun owners than rob a bank with gun owners, because you don't want to get hurt. You just want to get some money, so it's easier to do option A than it is B. And that's the same premise. This is why racism is taught. This is why, again, going back to the NFL is a perfect example of a racist undertone, right? How they teach racism. So they'll have end racism all over everybody's jersey and all over the stadium everywhere, but yet they'll create the controversy of the first two black quarterbacks facing off in a Super Bowl. So it's understanding that even bringing it up in the context is what creates it. And so when we're teaching our children to go out and be weary of racism, it's everywhere out there. Then what is that child doing? Now it's going out looking for this thing that you're calling dangerous and saying that it's everywhere. And now, so I don't know what the hell it is. I'm gonna go home, mommy. I think I saw racism today. And then mommy's gonna fly off the hinge, go down to the school, raising hell everywhere, embarrassing the
What did it look
child.
like? What did it look like? But I mean, now, could it be possible that racism is just a disguise for classism?
I absolutely believe so, because again, I think something was created in a time that it was not understood. It was something that was just now coming in, because I really think that we're in the dawn of humanity on this planet. For whatever reason, some catastrophe or something happened that wiped out humanity, and now we're just starting to grow again. And we're learning all of this crap. So as your trade routes back in the day started to advance, you started coming into cultures, right? You started coming into cultures that you've never seen before. So it's unexplained. And then back in the 1200s, 1300s, when all of these civilizations and cultures started to intermix with each other, you had these global economists at that time, these global uh, minds, I guess, right, that started to put human beings in a box by labeling us as, well, these lighter skinned individuals, we'll call them white. These darker individuals, we'll call them black. Now, these lighter individuals, they're fully capable of civilizing, creating communities and living amongst one another. But these darker individuals, they're just savages. They're incapable of civilization, and they're just savage life. They're only good for this one thing. And that became the common thinking. So at the root, it's classism, because the rich people don't want to work. They need slaves. And who else to enslave is the easier people who really don't understand what's going on to them. They have no knowledge of anything other than their little savage lives. Let's just enslave them.
If
Hell,
we
they
keep
go out
y'all
and
fighting, yeah, if we keep y'all fighting amongst each other, you're not going to pay attention to the fact that we're the ones that are the marionettes playing, making the scene happen. You know what I mean? You guys are too busy fighting amongst yourselves, busy with your children, busy with your families, with PTA, with the after school, and you know what I mean. It just they just find more things to keep you busy and occupied that you're not paying attention to the fact that the middle class is shrinking. Right, the folks that used to have to be the backbone of an economy is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We're heading into another event, another catastrophe, you know what I mean, as far as, a recession, depression. We've had a bunch of recessions up to this point, but we haven't had a depression in how long? And
Hmm.
so all of the signs there are
Again, that's
concerning.
all fear mongering.
They're all concerning. Well, I mean, fear mongering, yeah, but I mean, what are you gonna do if there's a run on the banks? What are you gonna do if, you know what I mean, we do end up in a recession? And like the last time it happened, how long were people out
Stop
of
using
work?
the banks.
No,
Stop.
how long
If
how long
we
are
are,
people out of work?
but
And if you can't afford to pay for stuff, then what do you do?
stop
Do
using,
you go into
stop.
default on everything? And
No, just stop using their system. Why can't I come to you, Sean, and say, Sean, listen, I need gear parts for my car. And you just happen to have the machinery to make these gear parts. And I do something for you that you need, right? Or I have, so it's why can't we as get into some sort of bartership where we all can produce our own whatever it is for each other? Why is it that we have to use, because all these banks, all of this stuff is just middlemen, right? Or you know uh they're creating opportunities that we ourselves could create.
well, we don't have a I agree with you. I think that bartering it for services that, aren't don't need to be tied into that system, like your insurance, your, whatever it is, it's your mortgage or all that stuff. I mean, you can't barter that away, right? But there are services that you can barter. You can haircuts, you can, taxes, there's other services out there that you could barter away. I think that's a good idea, but there's no infrastructure in place for that. And then that's going to require cooperation, right? That's going to require us shrinking down our communities to more local based stuff and having to cooperate with people.
Hmm.
That's going to require leaving your home. That's going to require going out and having to get to know your neighbor. That's going to require you know what I mean, all of these things that we haven't done in a long time. And
Mhm.
we've been separated from what it is, from the pioneers that we used to be when we came across this country, you know what I mean, settling, from the east. And we lost a lot of those ways. Some of it is growing your own food and preserving your food, right? They didn't have ice boxes back in the day. They didn't have, well, they did have ice boxes, but they were literal ice boxes, boxes that had ice in it. And
And
you
you
know
wasn't getting that down south, I promise you.
and so, like, I remember my grandmother used to have, mason jars full of food, you know what I mean, that she had grown and canned and preserved. And she came out of the Great Depression where, there was food scarcity at some point, you know what I mean, that, there were no jobs and people were, starving to death and dying in the streets that didn't have anything. I mean, that was not that long ago. 100 years in one of our lifetimes is what, about 80, the average lifetime. So like one person ago, this was happening, you know, that's not that long. So you have to be prepared. And the only way to prepare for that is to learn some of those ways. We don't know what's happening. You got all these, unsettling stuff that, could be another world war here at some point. Who knows? I mean, but if you're following all this stuff, there's all
Man,
these
these people
unsettling things.
yelling from the Federal Reserve can come out and throw an inflation rate out there that could crush this economy. She could do that Monday morning. Everything can change on a dime because we have allowed ourselves to get into a position where we are totally dependent on these corrupt officials. They feed us. our electricity, because we've become so accustomed to our lifestyle, our house, our air conditioning, our cars, our tablets, our things, everything that they give us to brainwash us. As you just said, we've lost survival skills. We don't have survival skills. So our survival skills is reliant on a government who doesn't care about us. They only want us to work.
Mhm. And then to control the inflation, right? Well, let's just raise the rates, right? And
Mhm.
so they're continuing to do that, and that's how they stop it. And in order to stop it, they have to cause a recession. They have to cause, and sometimes we're able to withstand it, but I don't think this time is going to be as easy, And I work and then AI too. Like, look at all the stuff that AI is going to replace a whole lot of back end systems for businesses that you don't need, like accounting and some of these
Mhm.
other things.
And we're allowing
Luckily,
it.
yep, and luckily I'm in a trade, so I mean it's not going to affect me as much. But I mean, if there's so much commercial property available because AI has removed so many people, so now you don't need as much space in your offices. Commercial buildings are going to be, you know what I mean? They're not going to need to build a whole bunch more unless it's companies like, pharma companies, stuff like that. But a lot of that, they'll just retool existing buildings and, like tenant improvements, and they'll buy whatever they need to do there. So I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see how all of this sort of shakes out.
Absolutely. And to get back into, I know we kind of went into a rabbit hole, but I mean, really that rabbit hole is still engulfed the whole point of centralized banking and the control effect, because that's what we were getting into, was the effects of what control does. So when we're talking about centralized banking and now getting into the crypto aspect of it, that's what it is. They want to control what it is that people are doing. I just saw a TikTok, and then to kind of wrap this up, but I just saw a TikTok that you had these officials. I stitched it, but you had these officials up here now talking about TikTok and how it's a national security, right? TikTok's a national security because over 100 million Americans are spending upwards of 90 minutes a day on TikTok, and that's a national security. And my question is why? Why is Americans doing what they want to do a national security? Because that 90 minutes a day for those 100 millions of Americans is resulting in what? Loss of work. And that is a national security, because we're sending billions of dollars overseas, and we need you to work and not be on TikTok. We have to pay this bill to Ukraine. So now they want to ban TikTok, or try to limit the access, because you have 100 million Americans, you know, spending 90 minutes a day on TikTok, doing what we want to do, enjoying ourselves, whatever it is.
Or, or could it be that the social media companies here already can't compete with the algorithm of TikTok because it's so good, and all of the advertising dollars are going from these corporate companies to TikTok now and
Mhm.
not to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, the big ones. And Adam Curry, who is the original pod father, right? So he's the original podcaster, the one that created the RSS feed that makes podcasting a thing even possible, right? That's his perspective. And he said that on Joe Rogan, that's what he believes, that they can't compete. They're losing all of this money. They already have a relationship with the government because they go to Capitol Hill all the time for, these things that they got to, Senate hearing, inquiry here, or this or that. They're already doing the government's dirty work for them. As we see in the Twitter files, that Twitter was in bed before Elon Musk came, that Twitter was in bed with the government, and
Mhm.
they had a backdoor channel to them and said, hey, we don't like what this person is saying, get them off the platform. And they would do
Mhm.
it, which is
Mhm.
illegal, which is, you're not, that's censorship. That's your First Amendment rights. It's, your freedom of speech. They're not supposed to do that as a government, but they can do it as a by proxy, using the platforms. So if they were doing it, then the other ones were doing it as well. And so they had this relationship with them. So that's why it's happening.
Absolutely. I believe that. And at the end of the day, TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance, which is, I know several years ago, ByteDance was under fire for being a mask, a front for the CCP, the China Communist Party. So, there's a lot of fear in the fact that the Chinese Communist Party potentially could be infiltrating Americans through this TikTok. And this is what TikTok was essentially designed for.
I think all of it can be true at the same time.
Amen.
You know what I mean? I think it all could be possible.
They're all communists, every last one of them, man. But going back to the original top, at the end of the day, you can only allow yourself to be controlled if you're unaware. If we're using this social media, that's why I said I don't really mind being marketed to the way that I am, because I know that I am. And it does make life a little bit easier if you understand that this is just a tool to make your life easier. It's not something that for you to be using unconsciously. Have consciousness in everything that you do. Know what it is that you're doing. Know why you're doing it. All my social media platform is specifically to bring awareness to who I am and what I do. I don't get on here to feel good. You know what I mean? I don't look to Facebook to brighten my mood. I do that myself.
Yeah, I don't look for sunshine and rainbows over on these places. It's kind of much like the opposite. I got a sword and a shield and a you know what I mean, hopefully a good night of sleep. So I don't allow them comments to permeate my whatever, you know what I mean, my mental health, because it will, man. I dove when I came down to visit you, and I was on one of those shows, man. I got into the comments and it fucked with me for a little while. And so now I'm just like, you know what? Now I know why Joe Rogan says don't go there. Just stay out of there. There's no reason. You don't need to know what other people have to say. And especially if it's about you.
And it's okay. It's just knowing, when it comes to self, knowing your tolerable level. I have triggers, no question. And sometimes I allow myself to get into a situation where these triggers will affect me. But as soon as I start realizing that, I get myself out of that position, because I know that once I get to a certain point, I'm uncontrollable. So I don't even allow myself to get into that point. I know my triggers and I try to stay away from them as much as I possibly can. Other people's comments, for me, don't really trigger me anymore, because I understand, good or bad. If a person comes to me and tells me how great something was, I'm trying to make it within me where it has zero effect on me, just like if somebody comes and tells me my show is bad. It's just their perception. It's just their perception based upon their reality. And if I'm walking through life every day, listening to the person who comes and tells me I'm a hero, and oh man, I'm a hero. That's great. I love hearing that. And then somebody comes and tells me, oh man, you're a loser. And then I let that affect me. I'm on a roller coaster every day, up and down, and I'm exhausted by the end of the day. I have no mental capacity for myself. Mm-hmm. So now when somebody comes and gives me a compliment, thank you for your opinion. I appreciate that. And I give them that same when they come in and tell me something negative. Thank you. I appreciate that. Because it's just their perception. So when I have people telling me, Sean, about flat earth versus round earth, okay, great. Don't care. What does that have to do with how you treat me on a daily basis? Because if the world is flat, does that mean you're going to be nice to me now? No. Right? Does that mean that the police are going to stop beating me to death on the street? No. Drugs are going to go away? No. Nothing changes. The world is just flat. So it's the same context. When you come and you talk to me about this government or Putin launching nuclear weapons or us going to World War III, China prepping up, all of this stuff, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I still have to get up, put on my pants, go out here, produce something, be nice to people, maybe help somebody. None of that affects me. Don't care. Could care less. To me, I'm coming to a point to where I am the creator of my reality. I don't create Putin with nuclear weapons. It's not in my reality. Don't care. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but until I look up in the sky and see this thing coming at me, nothing changes.
And even if you did see that it was coming at you, there's nothing you can do at that point to change the outcome.
No, but what changes? I don't go to work. I may try to jack off or something in that quick moment. You know what I mean? I may try to do, but that's what changes.
Yeah.
My reality changes when I look up in the sky and I see this missile coming. Okay, so what was important this morning is not important anymore.
No, absolutely. And I think that's what it should boil down to. You know what I mean? It's whatever you want to grow, feed that. Amen. You know what I mean? And so it's there was a saying and a whole story that goes along with that, but we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
My daughter woke up and she's ready to eat.
Okay, Daddy, you've had enough of your show. I'm the ruler of the house. It's time for me now.
Yep.
That's the attitude she's got.
I got to take her to Girl Scouts this morning. So before
great
the
conversation
storms
again, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. Hey, tell everybody where they can find you.
So yeah, again, this is Thomas FreeMe. You could just search Thomas FreeMe as one word, FreeMe. All my platforms come up, but yeah, we're trying to do this on every Saturday morning, man. Just get up and chop it up. You can really help me out if you're interested in who I am by going to www.cominghomecoalition.com. We actually have a raffle going at the end of the month. So please sign up. You don't have to be from the Tampa Bay area to sign up to support the homeless. That's what our program is. But we are giving away Tampa Bay Rays tickets. And if we sell enough tickets, I think we're going to build a tier structure. So if we get up to so many tickets, I have a package here that was donated from Wawa. Whoever knows Wawa, there's shirts and cups and stuff in here. If we sell more, I got a PlayStation 5 game to give away, a digital game. So if we sell more than that, then we have actually soccer tickets that we'll throw in the package. So we're going to have a raffle March 25th for that. And you can check that out at cominghomecoalition.com.
All right, sweet. And then you can find me at SeanDustin.com. All the platforms I'm on, all the videos, everything is right there for you. And until next time, keep it 100. Stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise. William Gilbert, thank you for coming and hanging with us. And anybody else, if you're on YouTube or any of the other platforms like Facebook, hit that like, subscribe, all the stuff that you need to do to help us grow this, what we're trying to do. And
Hey, man, I thought we had a great conversation. I don't know why people wouldn't want to join in and chime in for these things, but that's what we need. It's what helps us grow, So love you guys.
Examples of how to communicate in a way that even if you don't have the same perspectives, or even if you don't 100% agree with something that somebody else is saying, you should at least have the decency to hear what they have to say. You know what I mean? And know that it's just another person. Their perspective doesn't affect you in any way unless you let it.
Amen.
All right, man. Until next time, people. See you later.
We out.